Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. We have a very global audience today. Thank you all for making some time to join this webinar live. I am Adam Devine. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Kore, and I'm delighted to be talking with two very seasoned, experienced, successful executives, Saima and Kamal from PNC and Signify, respectively. And today we're going to be talking about how they have used conversational AI to improve customer service and basically just smooth out the operations of their business by automating business interactions. So I'm going to start by giving everyone an orientation about the subject matter, a couple of slides just to explain what we mean by business interactions, how we define conversational AI, what it means to a business. And then we have some prepared questions that I will run through as a moderator, so to speak, for Saima and Kamal to respond to. And then what will be very important is for you guys to ask questions. You can feel free to ask the questions throughout the webinar. I think it'll be best in terms of a format for us to get to those questions after we've run through some of the defined questions in the agenda. But please just feel free to introduce a question whenever it comes to you. And once we get towards the end of the webinar, we will get to those questions. So without further ado, let's get into the subject matter. So first, what do we mean by a business interaction? A business interaction could be anything from a question that somebody asks at the beginning of their relationship with a business to a transaction, moving money from point A to point B, all the way through to getting support in a transaction or getting support as an employee. And these interactions happen between a business and employee. So it could begin at the point of recruiting, and it could kind of not necessarily end, but could start happening as the employee gets developed. And it also happens between a business and a customer. So the sales onboarding, the transactions that happen as a customer that's getting ramped up, and then upselling and retention. And really the performance of a business is based on how well they handle these interactions between employees and between customers. So when you think about the composition of business interactions, when you think about how these interactions are distributed across a business, we believe there's a very clear line between the sort of interactions that bots or virtual assistants or chatbots, however you want to describe them, should be doing, and the types of interactions that people should be doing. And we believe that the bottom 80% of what we call this interaction pyramid should be automated by virtual assistants. So these sorts of interactions that we're talking about are kind of business inquiries and transactions, whereas the type of interaction that a person should be doing between two people are more of the open-ended, strategic, philosophical kinds of interactions. So when we think about customer interactions, they could be things like adding an international plan to my wireless or transferring money from checking to savings. And when we think about employee interactions, we're talking about questions like, how many more days do I have left in vacation? A common HR question, or scheduling a meeting between two coworkers, or even asking questions of an enterprise application like Salesforce. How many new opportunities were there this week? So these are the kind of interactions that can and should be automated when you think about an interaction pyramid. So there's a number of challenges that happen within most businesses, from the very top of the business, the interactions between customers and employees, all the way to the bottom of a business, the foundational layer of a business, which is enterprise applications. And the first common problem that we're going to talk about once we start the Q&A is long waits. One of the biggest problems in customer service is that people wait too long to be addressed, and they wait too long for their needs to be met. The second problem that we hear a lot about is these customer service channels like WhatsApp and social and email and chat. There's limited self-service. So they may be on the channels immediately, but they have to wait for a while for someone to come on board. And it takes a person to fulfill those requests. And that's a problem. And then the third thing that we hear about is that, particularly in banking, we have a lot of banking folks, a lot of insurance folks, a lot of healthcare people on this webinar today. Their agents spend too much time manually performing customer service, right? A lot of the things that they're doing, they shouldn't be doing because they should be automated. And then the fourth thing that we hear a lot about is that everyone is aware of these problems, right? But they don't have the IT resources internally to be able to solve the problem. And then when we get down to the foundational layer of a business, all of those enterprise applications, big tech, so to speak, it costs a lot to change. And there's a lot of rigidity in terms of changing how things work. So these are the top 5 problems that we hear about. So for each one of these problems, there is a conversational AI capability that solves them. And it automates the interactions, and it basically makes existing technology smarter. So to solve the problem of long waits, there is a conversational user experience. Basically, instead of having to wait for a person, when someone needs something, whether they're a customer or an employee, a conversational UX greets them. Hi, how can I help you, right? And then to solve the problem of limited self-service, i.e. needing a person to execute a transaction or to provide information or to point out where something is, you have intelligent virtual assistants that are steeped in the knowledge of the business and can actually answer questions and perform complex transactions from end to end. And on the topic of end to end, the excessive manual work that's happening within a contact center, that's solved by service interaction automation. So instead of just having a virtual assistant that can answer questions, you have that virtual assistant integrated with service interactions so that the bot can actually perform a process and deliver on a request. And then to solve the problem of scarce IT resources, I'm sure you guys on the phone have heard this before, but there is such a thing as a no-code design and configuration platform where you can go in and you can use automation, you can configure a process without having to write a single line of code. And then for that last problem, again, this is not our term, this is a common term that's out there. To solve the problem of big tech, the rigidity and the cost of it, you have an end-to-end enterprise-grade software development lifecycle platform. So these are the capabilities that solve these problems. And when you think about automating an interaction from start to finish, these are kind of the 5 steps along that continuum. You receive the request, you need to understand the need, you manage and lead the dialogue, you fulfill the request, and then you have analytics on top of it. So there are capabilities that you need to align with each one of these steps in order to automate an interaction. And the first one is omnichannel. Everyone talks about omnichannel, right? Being able to receive a request however a customer wants to send it. So we hear a lot, particularly in banking, about people beginning to use WhatsApp for banking. Can you actually begin and consummate a banking interaction in a channel that a millennial customer wants to have a conversation with you in? And that's oftentimes WhatsApp or social. Can you understand the need? Can you identify both the entity, which is typically the nouns, and the intentions, which is typically the verbs in a conversation? Can you manage and lead a dialogue? And in order to do that, you need to have a complete command of the context. So every conversation has context around it. If somebody wants information on a new mortgage rate, then they probably have an existing mortgage and there's a rate that they're trying to beat. And in order to fulfill the request, you not only have to be able to answer simple questions, you have to be able to execute rather complex transactions. And then finally, to be able to provide analytics to understand how well the business is performing from end to end. And you have to be able to assess and optimize the performance of VAs, and not just one, but all of the VAs that are performing across a business. So now let's get into our panelists. So I want to do a formal introduction of our panelists today, but I want to give you guys a sense who are on the webinar about what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about why conversational AI is important. We'll talk about build versus buy. So all of you folks who are technology buyers on the webinar today, at some point you've had the question, do we build this internally or do we buy it externally? And then we're going to talk about what to look for in a conversational AI product. We'll talk about where Saima and Kamal began their automation programs for the front office, how they measure their programs, what it takes in terms of a team to successfully to run a program. Then we'll talk about we get a lot of questions about virtual assistants versus RPA bots. There's a natural overlap between these two functions, between these two technologies. But we want to talk about where virtual assistants begin and where it ends, and how it integrates with RPA. And then I thought it'd be interesting to talk about the 3-year vision that Saima and Kamal have for their businesses. So I'm very excited to introduce these two folks, Saima Shafiq from PNC and Kamal Parasuram from Signify. I think PNC and Signify need no introduction. Signify was most recently called Philips, so it's a massive lighting company. PNC is one of the fastest moving, most innovative financial services businesses in the US. So I think, between these two people, we have great organizations represented with the types of common complex challenges that most of you guys on the webinar have faced or will face. And then there's me. I'm just your humble moderator. So I thought it might be kind of a fun thing to ask both of you guys. Let's say that you're in an elevator. I know it's been a while since we've been in an elevator with our colleagues, but let's say that you're in an elevator and you're going from the first floor to the 20th floor of a building with not just your boss, but your boss's boss. And your boss's boss says, I've heard great things about this conversational AI thing that we're talking about. What is it? How would you answer her question, Saima? How would be the way you would describe what conversational AI is doing for PNC?
So I would say conversational AI is something that can enable the users, whether they are customers or employees, in doing self-service with no prior training. That's a one-line answer, in my opinion.
I love that. That's awesome. Kamal, what about you? You're stuck in the elevator. Your boss's boss asks you, what is conversational AI and why are we doing it at Signify? How would you respond to her?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Yeah, for me, yeah, it's if you want to move the entire organization being more self-reliant or towards a self-service organization, conversational AI is the way to go.
I like that. If I were she, I would be sold just based on that. I think you guys have both nailed it. I think self-service, empowering individuals to solve their own problems in a way that's fast and seamless, and making the organization move faster as a result. So I think you guys both had similar answers. So thank you for that. That was a bit of a curveball. That was not one of the prepared questions. So I'm pleased to hear that you guys both were able to rattle it off super fast. So, you guys both are running organizations within your business to deploy conversational AI. Naturally, there was an inflection point with both businesses where you and your team said, hey, conversational AI, virtual assistants, this is something that we need to address. What were some of the operational challenges that compelled you to start exploring conversational AI? Kamal, you're on camera now, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. For us, I'm part of the IT, Signify IT, and IT, part of any big organization, it's always towards, how much is the cost they're going to spending towards IT, right? So that's the discussion normally happens. But Signify being a leader in the lighting industry, our focus or our thought from IT is like, say, how do we enable Signify to stay ahead of the curve? That was our thought process, and it was not an operational statement, I would say, but that is like, say, making sure that Signify stays ahead of the curve, which means we as IT have to enable our business. It's about user experience our internal business users will receive. How are we going to promote, let's say, self-service, and which all this comes together is how do we now make sure that we optimize the cost, right? These are the three focus areas, or these are the three starting points for us to move towards conversational AI.
That's interesting. So your first one, you weren't necessarily faced with a business problem and told, how do we solve this? To which conversational AI was answer. You guys were more empowered as an IT organization to look at the technology landscape and maintain the stance as a leader. So we Signify, we're a leader in our industry, and it is our job as a technology organization to explore new technologies that will continue to give us a business advantage. So it's less about solving an operational problem and more maintaining a leadership stance. Is that right? And then, of course, there's also the cost considerations.
Of course, enabling our business users, who is going to earn for us, and we are there because of them.
Got it.
Right?
Awesome. Thank you for that. As I was just about to ask Saima, what about you guys? Were you guys faced with a set of operational challenges that you were tasked with solving? What was it that compelled you and PNC to begin exploring conversational AI?
Sure. So I think there are specifically there are two different ways that any organization can approach it or face two different types of operational challenges. If it is starting from the strategic direction where you as a technology strategist are trying to have business units adopt conversational AI as the selected or preferred technology and put some focus on starting to leverage the virtual assistants, then your challenge would be to make sure that they will see the value. they will be excited about it. But would they be willing to commit time and resources to actually implement something that will give them benefit? So if you're coming from that direction, getting their commitment to work with you and be able to show them, yes, this is something that will work for them. On the other side, if you are starting as a business unit where this is not the central priority, however, as a business unit, maybe I am working for retail, I'm working for a specific group, and I do want to start leveraging virtual assistants. Now we have to do everything ground up ourselves. And now the operational challenge is you have too much work to do. Either way, there are going to be operational challenges, just like any new technology or any new adoption. But I think the point here is to make sure that we keep on showing the value and start small and then expand it to bigger objectives.
That's really thoughtful. And, I spent a lot of time in the RPA space, as I know you did as well. So when you were beginning to sell through the notion of conversational AI and make the case for why business units should invest time into it, what was your process like in terms of selling this in? Like you were obviously asking for the commitment of a business unit. What was the value proposition that you gave to them?
Yeah, and really it varies from one line of business to another, from one group of people to another. But typically the most important factor that we can talk about is average handling time for a certain type of request, certain type of use case. So we talk about finding out the average handling times, and then we talk about the volumes, and we say, let's try to pick up something small where you don't have an overly complex problem solution. However, this is repeating too many times in a day or in a month or in a week or whatever. And then your time spent on every individual request is something that is taking away from your ability to value add during your workday. So if your employees are doing it repetitive, you don't want to be taking away the quality of life from your worker or from your people who are serving this manually today. So we just keep on showing that value.
Yeah. And Kamal, would you echo that as well? Was it for Signify, did you sell it through by saying, hey, this is going to reduce our average handling time? What were some of the value propositions that you gave to your business partners to support your conversational AI rollout?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do concur with what Saima mentioned. It's about eliminating repeated tasks, and not just that. I mean, you also eliminate your manual tasks that have been performed, right? And throughput time, eliminating totally the wait time. These were the some of the features as a service organization we provided to our business. Yeah, and which indirectly relates to I would say an improved productivity from our business users, and the accuracy of data in which what we provide to the users, that actually tremendously increased. They can rely on the accuracy of the data at any point in time.
Makes a lot of sense. So you've managed, just in terms of the sequence of events, you've managed to identify conversational AI as something that we as an organization need. You've managed to bring in the commitment of your business partners who have these operational frictions and operational opportunities that would benefit from conversational AI. So once you've oriented yourself in the domain and you've decided that it's something you want to pursue, what were your criteria for selecting a platform? Kamal, why don't we start with you? What were you looking for in a technology partner?
Yeah, so we from IT, I mean, we are more focusing towards our experience the users will receive. The moment when you want to introduce a new way of working, right? What does that happen? It hits the user first is the experience of dealing with a service center or the service employees, right? So that was the primary or the top of the list. And when I talk about user experience, it's mostly about how good the platform can understand the intent of what the business user is trying to say, right? That's one. And the next one is like, say, is there a possibility of switching the context, which means you give a good feel to the user that you are actually talking to a human rather than to a bot. These are the primary criteria from a user experience. And now let's move towards the developer. It's about how quickly can you develop it. Can you reuse some of the components which you have actually developed? Can you tweak or can you have control over the accuracy of the intents that have been recognized, right? And finally, it's about when you're talking about a team, there are multiple developers. Can you share a bot with multiple developers during the development part? Thus, criteria. I can go on, and certainly the other one is about integrating with our enterprise platforms, right? We have platforms which are actually on our premise, and some are actually available in the cloud. How quickly can you integrate? Can you integrate with your IVR? Can you integrate with your OCR? And what are the out-of-the-box features which are actually available for us? I can say it's about support for multiple languages. Can you integrate with multiple channels? When I say talk about channels, whether it could be, can you access it from a browser? Can you access it from a mobile? Can you access it from various collaboration tools?
Mm-hmm.
Does it support agent transfer? I mean, say the bot cannot solve everything, but how can you give a seamless experience to the user? If the bot cannot solve, can you transfer the conversation to a live agent? That's part. And finally, last but not least, it's about the insights or the reports that you get out of the platform, which you can use it to improve.
That's awesome.
I can certainly go on, but then yeah, these are the top of the list for us.
I think you did a great job of kind of boiling it down to the top 5. So what I heard you say, Kamal, is you were looking for speed, simplicity, accuracy, accessibility, and reporting, right? Yes. And it sounds like for you as the technology lead on this, that the accuracy, the NLP accuracy was incredibly important. So you wanted to be able to understand the intent and then also be able to switch the context very quickly. So Saima, you and I have had the opportunity to talk about this as well. How would you add to what Kamal said? How would you agree? Were there any points that were maybe different in PNC's process in selecting conversational AI?
Yeah, no, I think Kamal did a great job of actually covering all the things that really touched my heart too, because when we were doing the evaluation, all of these were very important to us. But for those who might be listening and it is something brand new for them and they're looking at something that is going to provide the conversational AI capabilities for their organization, if they were to put all of these features and functions or capabilities in 2 columns, and they would say, these are my table stakes, these are my differentiators, I would say, I would start listing, let's say security and encryption for most of our organizations, right? We want to make sure that the platform provides good security standards, authentication mechanisms, and encryption mechanisms for all data in motion, data at rest. That's your table stake. You cannot choose a best platform that does not provide you security. That's one thing. Another table stakes, integration capabilities. How easily can you integrate with other systems, whether that is downstream, like connecting with the enterprise systems, or it is the channel connections or connectors that are provided out of the box. So integration capabilities, once again, it's a table stake. You have an excellent platform. It is no code, but it is very hard to integrate with some other systems. What's the point? We wouldn't be successful in using that. Once again, another table stake, hosting options. Do you want to do on-premise, on cloud? Whatever your choices are, you would consider that as a table stake. Language support, if you are offering multiple languages, then you would consider that as baseline as well. Now let's talk about differentiators, and that's where Core really excels as well. So the differentiators I would count, first of all, the platform's ability to involve the business users and involve the business teams. And this is exactly what Kamal mentioned as well, how easy it is for us to use the platform and really come to see visually how my ultimate product would help my customer. So the ease of use, low code, no code, a type of feature, and then least amount of development and more of the configuration that you can easily do through one or least amount of interfaces. Second thing, omni-channel, you build it once, you deploy it as many times as you want across multiple channels, whether that is your phone channel, web channel, IVR channel, SMS channel, your social messengers, whatever the case may be for you. You want to make sure that your developers do not have to keep on rebuilding and doing it from the scratch. You want to build it once, customize it as needed, and then deploy it on any of the channels of your choice. And then the most important thing, this is the cornerstone, NLP power. How good is the NLP strength of the platform that requires least amount of effort by your team when you are building something ground up? You do not want to be spending hours and hours. You do not want to be spending time on collecting diverse data from thousands of different places because you want the bot to be performing well. You want something like Core that offers already pre-built, preloaded taxonomy, dictionary items, preloaded synonyms, a lot of things that are provided out of the box. So your amount of effort spent on NLP tuning is reduced because platform does it for you. So I think NLP is on the top of everything, the power that it provides to make your bot really understand your intents, against any of your utterances. It can help with entity mapping. And without NLP strength, you can have an excellent platform. However, if you have to spend too much time in actually gathering good amount of NLP data or the machine learning models, you're basically killing your speed to market. So
Yeah.
I think that is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Saima. That's very articulate. So I think
And last thing, sorry, before I forget, Kamal mentioned that as well. Ultimately, the seamless agent escalation, you want to make sure whenever there is time that the user wants to connect back with an agent, the platform enables you to connect with an agent with full context, full history, all information that was captured by the bot. So the agent taking it live real time now has all of that information accessible for a faster service.
It was almost like you read my mind, Saima, because what I was going to ask you about, you did a great job of talking about the benefit of good NLP for the user, for someone inside PNC, not having to gather a bunch of data, coming pre-equipped with the ontologies and the definitions and the knowledge graph. What's at stake for the customer, for the employee? If a business were to make a mistake and buy a conversational AI platform that had shallow NLP, what is that experience like for a customer, for an employee who's actually using it as a user?
Yeah, frustrated customer means you have your adoption going downwards, right? And one of the things, I mean, of course, there is one thing that you would identify that NLP was not good. And people would simply not adopt it, and they would stick to their current state mechanism, which is manual. And of course, you're spending all of this time in building something conversational AI, but it is not smart enough to actually understand. And if that is the case, you're killing your own adoption yourself. So without good NLP, there is no chances of success, to be very honest. Your adoption would be really struggling. The additional thing that brings me here is analytics that Kamal mentioned as well. If you have, let's say, 95, 97% accuracy, then you go to production and you still find out new ways of saying the same intent, the new utterances that you find out. Good analytics in a platform, good insights, good visibility of what is successful, what is not, and ability to map them back to the correct intent or train your bot over time on a very regular basis. The continuous feedback loop would be essential as well. And that is something that Kore provides as well.
That's awesome. Well, I do appreciate you mentioning Kore. That's very kind of you. So Kamal, I think Saima has talked a lot about the technology, the importance of NLP. Was there anything that you wanted to add? Anything that you heard that resonated with you as she was talking about the importance of good NLP?
Certainly yes, certainly yes. I mean, that's the way how you give an experience to the user. You don't want to give an experience that you're talking to a bot or just a web page, a static web page where you find your own way in getting your answers or queries responded, right? NLP, yes, understanding what the user is intending to say is certainly in the top. And we have, I mean, in this case, we spent quite a lot of time in trying to say, okay, ours is a global organization. The way how the utterances are framed differs between APAC to US. That's an advantage what we got from the platform, the pre-trained utterances or pre-trained synonyms. That actually helped us quite a lot.
Awesome. So, go ahead.
Bottom line over there again, nobody wants to see, sorry, I don't understand what you said.
Exactly. Yes.
Nobody wants to hear that.
And you as a business don't want, zero agent operator, you don't want to escalate just because your NLP didn't work.
Yeah.
No one wants that. That's a chatbot 1.0 problem, right? Back, 2 or 3 years ago when NLP was a pipe dream. So, both PNC and Signify are big organizations. You have very deep technology capabilities. Inevitably, you thought, do we build this? Do we buy this? What was your thought process? Signify probably could have tried to build this in-house. What drew you to buying a platform rather than building the capability from microservices that are offered by Amazon, Microsoft, Google? Why buy a platform versus build?
It's basically learn from your mistakes, right? We tried to build it, of course, not in the conversational AI part, but in the other area. But the challenge was like, say, that's not our core business. Right? Our core business is like, say, kind of, how do we sell the lights or luminous or the services towards across light, right? So it was, for us, is an obvious choice. There are experts in the market. Why don't we leverage them? Yeah. So we don't have to say, sorry?
I said, easy answer. It's not your core business. You guys make and sell beautiful lighting. Why would you want to build out conversational AI, right?
Exactly. And look for a product which can actually you can plug and play.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the criteria. So for us, the decision was pretty easy. It's like you go for a buy if there are no products available in the market, and if it is critical for us, then we go for a build. So
Yeah.
otherwise, it's clearly leverage others' experience or expertise.
Yeah, and Saima, was that the same kind of rubric that PNC went through? Is this our expertise? Is there a good solution on the market? Can you tell us about the build versus buy?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say that I think it's very typical of any organization to consider doing their own, right, the build approach. They would take that. But the problem with that is actually answering one of the questions that we have on the Q&A chat here as well. Scalability. How well can you scale if you are actually building it yourself? Because you are, first of all, you're learning how to do all of these things. You're not using your strengths. You are trying to prove yourself smart and compare with somebody who's actually working on the platform as their own strength or their core business. So I would not spend my energy on something that is not really my strength. I mean, if I want to make it really scalable and if I really want it to be adopted widely, the buy option in this case, for instance, when we buy a platform that is created by those who are expert of this capability, I get the benefit of a lot of their expertise from over the years. Yet I have the option to customize my things at a much a higher level of freedom when I am, and there are different ways of thinking about it too. I mean, I would like to give a quick example, if that makes any sense. If I know how to cook omelet and I can do that in 3 minutes, and my husband would take 30 minutes, I know some days I would want him to do that still, maybe a Sunday, but not every day, because I know it's going to just take too much time and it's going to be too much mess in the kitchen and fire alarm goes off. And we do not want to be doing things that we really are not performing as our core function.
That's awesome.
Right. So I think that's really the bottom line. You want adoptability, you want it to be adopted widely, and you want it to be scalable. You would rather benefit from somebody who is already doing it as their core business and not try to reinvent the wheel.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, actually, Anne has asked our first question, and it's funny enough, it's the same question that I was going to move to in terms of where you started your program and how you scaled it. So was there a particular use case at a particular business unit where you began your conversational AI rollout? And then what was the approach to scaling it across the enterprise? How did you identify and prioritize new use cases? Why don't we start with you, Simon, and then we can have Kamal think about that.
Yep. So I think this is what we learned as well. I mean, this is all industry research, right? We want to start something that is not immediately customer facing. So you're starting something really new. You want to start something that is employee facing, not customer facing. That's the first thing. Additionally, you want to start limited so you get allow the pilot users to start feeling the taste of it and provide you honest feedback, which is really organically provided back in order to make sure that you are actually production ready for a full go live. So you want to limit your initial rollouts to limited set of users and internal facing only. And then you keep on expanding to that by providing the agent escalations, by expanding it to a bigger group of users, by making it accessible through multiple, let's say, branches or multiple organizational units and stuff. So you would start very thoughtfully in keeping it limited initially and then expanding it for scalability.
That makes sense. So start typically inside and then move outside. And does that answer your question? I'd be happy for you to follow up with a more pointed question if that didn't cover it. But I think that's a good overview. Start internally, start small, and then sequentially move throughout the enterprise once you've demonstrated success. And Anne, thanks for the interactivity. I see that we've answered your question. And I would encourage you guys on the call, please feel free to roll out more questions. Now's a good time to start peppering our speakers here with questions. So in terms of, Kamal, what was your approach at Signify? Did you have a different approach? Did you start externally? Did you start internally? How did you prioritize the use cases going forward?
Yeah, it is the same strategy what we had. Start small, right? Yeah, we just started small, and also what we did was, like, say, in our case, the challenge was totally different. We did not want to target one business unit in the organization, but then we want to target across the organization, but start with one functionality, right? I mean, say, the funny thing is, like, say, we also launched it in such a way that it was about changing your password or resetting your password. And the timing of launch is we had timed it in such a way that when people are back from their holidays, most of the time they forget their password. And normally our service desk will be fully flooded with password reset requests, and which used to take, let's say, few hours. Now they can actually go to the conversational part AI, and then they can get it done within few seconds. So launch for us was important. But then we started small. And what we also wanted to do is, like, say, how can we create a buzz in the organization? You started small, but how can you create a buzz? That's the way forward. Launch the timing, start focusing on one functionality that's going to have a much bigger impact for the organization users.
That makes sense. And on the topic of buzz, naturally buzz comes from results, right? So how did you guys, what were some of the universal, readily understandable KPIs that you guys use to measure the performance, the success of your virtual assistants?
Adoption rate.
Yeah.
Adoption rate.
How well is it adopted? How well is it adopted? That's very
Yeah.
Okay.
How well is
quick
it
measure.
adopted, plus the experience, right? I mean, the feedback from the users.
Right.
And how quickly are we able to help the users address their queries or address their tasks, what they want to, what they are looking for.
Yeah. Before we move to the
And,
next topic, I wanted to add one thing in our use cases selection. Maybe there are those who are listening and they're thinking, well, my use case really has to be customer facing because that's the team that is committed to work with us, but internal facing are not yet. One of the things that we can recommend for the beginners is that even if your ultimate solution is going to be in the hands of customers, it is still recommended that you initially roll it out or pilot it with the limited users who you have a better interaction with, so you can really incorporate the feedback before you launch full production. So even if it is absolutely customer facing, you still have ways around making sure that you are doing a good pilot and you're really prepared to roll it out and increase the chances of higher adoption.
Makes sense. So we now have two questions about timeline. Rangan has asked what kind of timeline we're looking at to teach a new language to a conversational bot. I know PNC, you guys have spent some time thinking about languages with your VAs. What sort of timeline is it to teach a VA a new language?
That's a very good question. I think with a platform like Core, the enabling of another language is not something that really depends too much on developers as such. It is about how well business teams can support the language training or the language verification or the testing of the bot. So if you are thinking of adding a brand new language and you have, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 intents, it really depends on how much additional language training you have to bring into play. And it could be a matter of 3 weeks, or it could be a matter of 4 to 6 weeks, really, if you are incorporating all of that additional language department of your organization coming in to verify and give a legal approval for the language terminology that you're using for whatever the other languages are doing. There are organizations that are not very strict, but with banks like ours, everything has to be scrutinized and has to be legal and risk compliant. So for us, as long as we have the things in place, it's a matter of weeks for getting their approval of what we are training. You don't have to do redevelopment of the bot as such. In Core like platform, you don't have to develop the bot again. You can actually switch the languages on the fly during the conversation anytime very easily. It's a matter of getting your approval from your compliance that whatever language you're training the bot to speak or to understand is something that they approve.
Something we hear often is that often the speed of an application is based on internal governance, right? It's internal road. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But also on the topic of timeline, well, Kamal, did you have a different experience in terms of language readiness? Would you agree?
I do. I fully agree with what Saima did mention. It all depends on availability of an internal team who can validate the translation, what can be offered. So that's the place where we spend quite a lot of time. Our compliance officers, our privacy officers, because it varies across the region. So I would say compared to the development time, 2-3 weeks it's nothing if you want to teach a new language. So for us, it takes months before we launch because of our internal policies.
Mhm.
And that too, if you are starting up front, I mean, when you are starting development, you have identified your intents that you want to train on a different language. The sooner you know your intents, you can start your language work right away. Because, as I said, there is no additional development work on the platform. It is just a language training, and that has to go through your own governance process. So it's no extra time as such if you are preparing ahead of time.
That makes sense. So as long as we're on the topic of weeks, Anne has asked what the amount of time is between initial pilot to full launch readiness. Can you sequence that for us in terms of weeks, days, weeks, months? What did that look like for PNC?
We keep a 3-week minimum, which is something that we just recommend for all new teams, but some teams may vary. They might say I want to go live after 1 week, and others might say I want to go after 1 month. It's all up to them depending on the use case, how crucial is the function that you're serving. But it's a matter of few weeks. We recommend, I think, as a center of excellence, 2 to 3 weeks period at minimum.
So this is, I mean, honestly, in the context of technology, this is fairly radical. You know, even 4 or 5 years ago, when we were looking at new technologies, to do a POC, that's like at least a quarter, right? You know, and even a quarter was pretty radical to do a POC in a quarter and then launch. Saima, you're nodding. Do you recognize the impressive amount of time that we're talking about these days?
Yeah, it's something that you can always adopt a phased approach if you are too nervous that, hey, compared to my one quarter, 6 months sort of a timeline that I had in mind, 1 week, 3 weeks, 5 weeks sounds too short. You can always adopt a phased approach where you are like, okay, my limited pilot users, 50 users for first 2 weeks, then I have 500 users for next 3 weeks, and then I have 1,000 users, and then I'm to 50,000 plus in the second month or third month. It's all up to you, and it's all up to the business. But I don't see any harm in expanding it gradually, and enabling yourself to see more diverse interactions with the bot over time.
So what I like about what you guys are saying is that it really is up to the business. The technology is simple enough, powerful enough, accurate enough that if you wanted to hit the gas, you could go from a pilot in a matter of weeks to production within, a couple of weeks, right?
If you did a good job in building it for the first time, when you did, right? When you
Yeah.
piloted it, if you did a good job in making sure your NLP is performing well and you're actually serving the use cases that this broader audience would appreciate, absolutely, why not? However, one thing that I would caution here is that if you are only implementing a limited set of use cases, out of, let's say, 10 things that a customer can ask, you're only training the bot to do one thing and you are rolling it out very widely. The chances of getting questions that the bot does not know how to solve yet will increase. So you want to be really cautious of who you are giving it in hands of, and be prepared ahead of time rather than giving them, sorry, I don't understand what you're saying kind of problem.
Makes sense. Awesome. Kamal, what about for Signify? What was the timeline from POC to production?
First of all, I do resonate what Saima mentioned. Build doesn't take time at all, right? It's about the preparation, the various ways ways in which the question could be asked, plus pilot. These were the important aspects for us. And the initial launch, of course, it took much time because we also had to integrate with all our 33 SAP platforms what we have in our organization. That actually took time. But then if it's about FAQs, the current practice what we have is like 2+1. 2 weeks where, it includes the preparation plus the build, and 1 week for pilot, and then we launch it. So that's how initially it took us, certainly, yes, it took us 3 months for us before we launched our first use case. That's because of the complexity what we had in our landscape. Otherwise, it's much easier, much quicker.
Awesome. So for Signify, what are some of the use cases? You guys have been up and running for a while. What are some common things that your virtual assistants are doing for Signify and for its customers and employees?
Yeah, I can probably say, our association with Core is almost 3+ years now. And we started the journey 3 years back with small, it's about changing a password. But our entire identity management of our organization is managed via this conversational bot. Finance, anything about third-party invoices, real live invoice status, you can actually fetch. Onboarding users, we have it here. You want to know, most of the challenges an organization have is about whom do you reach out in case you have a challenge. So that's an use case we have onboarded. I mean, I can continue to list, but then it's now we have actually grown from one in I think late 2017 when we launched. We have almost now 65 plus use cases which are there available in the bot.
That's awesome. That's an impressive rollout. You guys have done a great job.
Yeah, certainly, yes.
Awesome.
Thanks to the team from Core as well, who actually was guiding us initially in the entire journey, I would say.
Indeed. Well, it's been a great journey. PNC,
Yeah.
What about you guys? You guys have done an amazing job too. I think we have a lot of banking users or banking prospects on the webinar. What are some use cases that you've seen both internally and externally for PNC? Saima.
Sure. Yep. So the internal ones, I would start by saying there are hundreds of different questions or types of requests or types of issues that employees report. So our initial use cases were really focusing on doing the employee service for incidents or requests or for FAQs. I want to order something. I want to request a new monitor. My printer is not working. All of those internal employee specific use cases, those would be your initial ones. As soon as you start establishing that center of excellence, there will be teams who have, their existing developers or technical resources who were already probably creating other chatbots using Python or something else. And they would be like, we want to use the platform now that it is making it so much easier for us. So they would come like, I have these deployment related functions that I want to perform. I have these chat ops related kinds of functions that I want to perform. There are going to be a whole bunch of internal employee specific servicing areas. From customer facing standpoint, you would want to start specifically for the beginners, you want to start very carefully in a very limited intent that you want to make sure you know exactly what you're going to service. So maybe there are things that people are doing on the mobile or the web app today, and they were doing it, but they had to navigate on the web page doing different functions. Now you can put a virtual assistant on the top, and instead of a customer coming to the website and browsing and finding out, oh, where do I go for opening a new account, or where do I go for doing XYZ? Now the chatbot can help you navigate that. And then maybe there are times when you have specific requirements on educating your customer properly. So customer facing is just like limitless. There are so many opportunities there, but you want to start something that is high frequency and a higher average handling time and provides a better customer experience by doing your KYC. You want to start something that starts gathering customer information with a consent and stores that to continue to extend how you are servicing on a personal level.
That makes a lot of sense. And just briefly, when you think about the composition of your team, both of you guys, what are the core talents that you need in your talent bench to be able to support an organization as it adopts and rolls out conversational AI?
Okay. First thing is about people with the right attitude in the team, right? Their willingness, and they need to act as ambassadors on what is being done.
Mm.
That's on the behavioral part. On the technology front, what you need, I mean, it's like a solution architect. You have a business analyst. Why you have business analyst and a process owner? It's not like, say, you do not automate anything and everything. You do not automate a broken process, right? So the process owners, they are the ones who are going to identify and tell you, okay, these are the processes which have been harmonized. These are the ones which are frequently used. It's a very good candidate for automation, right? They play a major or a critical role. Next is your developers with a bit of a programming knowledge in Python or JavaScript. I would say these guys. And finally, the guy who's going to sponsor. He needs to be part of the team. And let me use the word sponsor of the entire initiative. They must be there in the team.
So process owners, business analysts, developers, and sponsor. Saima, what about PNC? What does your team look like?
Sure. So I think, if you're talking what a team should look like in order to make something successful, to get it into production, not just to build it, but actually to get something to production, I would say these are the 5 key roles that I would include. Within your area where you want something to deliver or develop a solution, you need a BA/conversation designer, somebody who can work on the conversation design or the conversation flow. It could be the conversation designer developer role, or it could be a BA using storyboards in Core, for example. So that's one part, conversation flow specification. Second part, as Kamal mentioned, you would need a developer or a solution architect who has some JavaScript or Python knowledge to do the actual integrations on the backend systems where you're dependent. The third role is NLP expert or a data scientist, or whoever is the language, I would say, passionate, who wants to work really in that NLP tuning of the bot. So for the deliverable, there are three roles: conversation designer/BA, developer or architect, and then the NLP expert. However, these three guys can deliver an excellent, outstanding kind of a chatbot, which would not go to production if you do not have a buy-in from, like Kamal mentioned, the business sponsor or the product owner. So you want to have a strategic decision made by the business team who owns the product that you're launching, who makes the decisions on how your releases are going to go into production, what are you including in release 1 versus release 2, and so on. And finally, a very crucial role, which may not have to be on your team, but has to be identified, is who is going to sign off on what you have delivered: a tester, somebody who can verify what you have created actually is up to the standard for putting it in front of your users.
End to end. I like it. So we have a question I want to get to real quick. Christian asks if there are native Android, iOS, mobile SDKs to integrate Core with existing apps, and do we support Apple Business Chat? The short answer is yes. But Saima, have you guys had any experience in this domain so far?
Yeah, I mean, we have not yet integrated it on mobile app. We are in the process of, but we know that there are more than one ways of achieving that.
Yeah.
So we are in the process of doing it for employee-specific apps. However, we have not yet rolled it out in production.
And Kamal, I see you're nodding your head. Have you guys done this yet with Signify?
Yes, we have tried it with the native mobile SDK. We created a separate app with help from Core, but now we don't see the need for that because we already have Teams, and Teams is actually available on your mobile. So makes it easy for us. We don't have to, provide one more channel for our end users. So
awesome. That's great. So I just want to point out to everyone on the webinar, we're rolling towards the end of the hour. If you have other questions that you'd like to be addressed in the next couple of minutes, please feel free to post them. No question is too simple or too complex. We have two superstars on the webinar here who can answer them. While we're waiting for a couple more kind of closing questions to roll in, maybe we can talk about your visions for, let's say, the next 3 years. Kamal, as long as you're on camera, how do you imagine Signify to be different in 3 years as a result of your work in conversational AI?
Yeah, what we actually want to do, the automation is being done. Okay, by the way, automation is now, it's one of the strategic priorities within our organization. And we do automate, whether we are talking about a judgmental, which I can say from RPA, or you have a structured in case of an virtual assistant. How do we integrate both? Plus, we also want to start focusing towards what we call the intelligent business process modeling, right? Say a process, how do you check the efficiency of a process? What you have designed versus how it's been used. Use process mining for that. So for us, the vision from Signify, or what you could also see in the longer run, is like, can we integrate all of these technologies and provide a seamless experience towards our, again, internal business users? Of course, that's something we want to start with. Next is like, we also want to move towards more and more towards the customers. Many of our products are consumer facing. Can we enable our contact centers? Can they complement contact centers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and given that the millennials, they do experience, they prefer user experience, they prefer different channels in which they want to get their issues addressed. So I would say, yeah, in 3 years, it's about automating your automated work.
Makes sense. That's awesome. So Saima, I think someone has asked something that is related to the 3-year vision, but just very briefly, can you talk more about the functionalities PNC implemented for customer service in particular? What are some of the buzzword functionalities that PNC has brought into customer service?
I may have to apologize on that one because it is proprietary sort of information that we are not really approved to share specific PNC use cases. However, I've been giving general examples throughout of you know things that we can do with customers. It can be solving customer problem, something that we are solving already on IVR today, for instance. You may be answering phone calls, and you can go to your own department and find out what is the most frequently asked question on the phones today, and then find out what is the average handling time there. So there's a lot that you already have, and most organizations already have those chat transcripts. They have those volumes of what is the most popular question, and which question takes the longest amount of time, and which question touches least or most number of systems. So there's a lot that teams who are looking to implement something customer facing, they can gather it from their call centers itself, or from their IVR chat transcripts or logs that can be collected.
So really, you're getting a profound amount of analytics on how the business is interacting with its customers at a very granular level. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
amazing.
then doing a deeper dive to find out which one is the best initial pick, because we don't want to pick something that is overly complex. If you want low hanging fruit, you want to find out something that is painful today, that is a longer average handling time, as I mentioned. It is moderate complexity or simple in nature, so you're not dependent on a old fashioned mainframe application where you cannot integrate easily, for instance. You want to pick something moderate to simple in complexity, a higher or reasonable amount of average handling time, and repetitive, high volume. It's occurring too many times in a day or in a week or in a month, and that's what you want to pick.
That's awesome. So just in like the space of a couple of breaths, what is your personal vision for PNC through conversational AI? What do you want the business to look like in 3 years?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I love that. It's near and dear to my heart, because we want to make sure that those applications that we have already launched, we keep a significant improvement in place, so we can keep enhancing and see a higher, better adoption rate across more channels than what we have launched them initially for. So all of our use cases that we deployed it on a limited, let's say one channel, web channel, phone channel, or whatever the channel may be, one of them. And then we want to extend it over to multiple channels, make it more accessible, make it more easily usable for them. And then adoption rate is one thing that I mentioned earlier for the KPIs as well, the containment rate. How well are they staying within the bot, getting their job done, getting to the end of the task without having to either drop off or to connect with the live agent. So my second metrics there would be to make sure that we have least dependencies on the live chat agents, because the bot has been trained and tuned enough that it can really do start to end. And we expand from all of our pilots to full blown production for whatever use cases we have. Plus, of course, add more business lines, whichever is not ready in there today. They will see the benefit, and we want to incorporate more.
That's awesome. So it's 3 years from now. It's the year 2022, almost 2023. You're in the elevator with that same boss's boss, and she gives you 3 adjectives to describe how PNC is performing thanks to conversational AI. What do you think those adjectives would be?
I may have to take some time in thinking those 3 adjectives. So if you want to go to Kamal first.
Kamal, what do you think? You're basically getting congratulations from your boss's boss, and she uses 3 adjectives to describe what Signify is like thanks to your efforts in conversational AI. What might those adjectives be, or what do you hope them to be?
Okay, I would say simple, effective, and a happy customer. It's not an adjective certainly, but yeah, a happy customer.
I think that's an adjective. I like it. What about you, Saima? What would be those 3 adjectives?
Yeah, so I want to hear that the excitement that you started it with is still present, and it keeps on growing. I really want to see that you have not allowed the excitement to fade down. We want to keep the excitement as it is right now. 3 years ago, right? We want the same excitement and positive feedback, so people are still seeing the value, and those who have not adopted it yet, they are also equally excited or more, and those who adopted it, they are grateful that they did.
That's fantastic. Well, guys, we're at the end of the hour. You've both been so generous with your experience and with your time. Saima, Kamal, thank you both for being our customers. Thank you for all the time and effort that you've put into making your conversational AI program successful. We appreciate it so much. And I know that everybody on the webinar really appreciated getting an inside look into your experience and to hearing from you directly about how you've become so successful with your program. So with that, I thank you all. Thank you all on the line for joining. And please feel free to reach out to all of us on LinkedIn. You know, this is ultimately, we're building a community here, and you have here two formidable experts in the space. I'm sure they'd be very happy to connect with you and share more insights offline. So with that, thank you so much, both of you, for joining. Thank you all for being on the webinar, and I wish you a beautiful day and a beautiful evening.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Yeah, thank you.